All right, hello everybody. Thank you so much for attending. My name is Kurt Prendergast. I'm the opinion editor at the Arizona Daily Star. With me is Dana Allmond, who is running for state representative in Legislative District 17. There are 2 seats available in this district, and there are 4 candidates. We did a chat with Democrat Brian Radford on the 23rd, I think, about a week ago. We reached out to Rachel Jones, a Republican candidate, and she declined to participate. And we reached out to Cory McGarr, another Republican candidate, and we have not heard back from him. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to ask Dana to kind of tell us a little bit about herself. And then I'm going to move into some of like the big issues that the state faces. And then I would encourage all the readers to use the chat function and put in questions, and we'll kind of filter those in as we go along. So let's start off. So Dana, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So first, I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity to share my views. I'm grateful that one of my articles entitled "Children and Guns Don't Belong in the Same Sentence" was published a couple of months ago. And in this article, I expressed my point of view as a mother and Army veteran on what happened at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, when 19 children and 2 teachers were slaughtered when a young man used an AR-15. I just want to be very clear. AR-15s are meant to destroy bodies. These weapons they are weapons of war, and they have no business in civilian hands. And so I know we are going to stay focused this year. This November 8th, Arizonans will elect lawmakers that will serve to save our democracy and our dignity. I am Dana Allmond, and I'm so proud and humbled to be the Democratic nominee for Arizona State House Representative to represent our neighbors, our LD17 neighbors, and all our neighbors in Arizona in the state legislature. This is very personal and emotional for me. I've been running since last March, last year, and I am running to protect the life, limb, health, and welfare of my family and all Arizonans. I have seen it up close and personal. Arizonans are action people. We focus on what we can do. We focus on our shared public values, and we will continue to do this. We must own it, believe it, see it, plan it, execute the plan. And I've got friends that keep telling me, we better repeat that. And I have been a Marana, Arizona resident since 2016. I'm a proud veteran, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, and 1994 West Point graduate. I have a master's degree from West Point in individual psychology, a master's degree from Long Island University in counseling and leader development. And recently in 2019, I now have an MBA from Arizona State University. I take the West Point motto, duty, honor, country, seriously. I hold the West Point Cadet Honor Code dear to my heart. The code says a cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. I'll tell you, my oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, did not expire or vanish when I retired from the Army almost 6 years ago. My more than 23 years of active duty service makes me uniquely qualified and prepared to become a lawmaker right now, because I do not back down from a fight. It is literally in my DNA to always be a public servant. The Allmond family serves their country and their local communities. Allmonds do not back down from a fight. And I have seen Arizonans, we do not back down from a fight. I will keep going until I literally lose my life. We are people of action. And I want to share that I'm a mother of 4 children, and I want a much brighter future for them than I had growing up. My oldest daughter is 18 years old. She graduated from Canyon Del Oro High School in 2021 and is currently a sophomore at Ithaca College in Ithaca, New York. She's majoring in musical theater, and I know she's definitely Broadway bound. And it was just such a wonderful moment on the 7th of July for my daughter and I. We pulled into our garage, we had our ballots, opening them up, And this was so special because my daughter, Sydney, this was her first time voting this primary, and her mom was on the ballot. How cool is that?
Mhm.
And I also have 10-year-old triplets. They are in the 5th grade. And notably, they were born on 11/11/11, and they're going to turn 11 this year, right after the election. So at their birth, I was serving the Army on active duty in St. Louis, Missouri. And I tell you, my superior commanders had such utmost trust and confidence in my ability to protect the health and welfare of others that they simultaneously let me command 2 distinct organizations that consisted of having the solemn responsibility for tens of thousands of members of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. They were joining our active duty, reserve, and National Guard ranks. And I had the honor to work with military members and Department of Defense civilian personnel who served those new members of our armed forces with distinction across 6 different states. They were in St. Louis, Kansas City, Oklahoma City, Little Rock, Shreveport, and New Orleans. And that was from 2011 to 2013. I'm a wife, and my husband is a physician assistant, and he's in service of veterans every day at the Tucson VA hospital. He works in emergency medicine in the Tucson VA emergency department. He's a native of Tucson, Arizona. He graduated from Amphi High School in 1985, and we have been married for more than 22 years. And I want to especially share with you that I want to live up to my father's and grandfather's legacy of public service. They are unfortunately both deceased. I lost my father, Elgin Lodine Allmond, earlier this year, and he was only 73 years old. He was a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel as well, and he concentrated his efforts on lifting up other military officers to reach their full potential, including general officers. My grandfather, Calvin P. Allmond, he died in 1979 and 1978 at the very young age of 49. I was only 6 years old. He was an inspirational civil rights and community leader. He ran for the Virginia House of Delegates twice in the early 1970s, and he ran for sheriff. So this is deep in my DNA, and I care about many things. But my top priorities are: 1, I want to protect human and civil rights, starting with voting rights. Without voting rights, the rest of what we care about, simply, it's not going to matter. I want to reinstate reproductive freedom. I want public K-12 education fully funded so our children receive a quality education. I want no expansion of vouchers. We need smaller class sizes, and brick and mortar schools must not crumble on their very heads. Our educators have been neglected. They've got to be treated with dignity and respect. They need a living wage and benefits. This is long overdue for them. I want to improve mental health care quality and access across the state to reduce burnout, fatigue, and trauma exacerbated by the pandemic. And I want to ensure that federal dollars make it to the many infrastructure projects needed to make it safer for Arizonans. We must have safe and clean water and to be able to safely navigate doggone to and from our homes. And so my overarching fight is to restore honor and integrity to state lawmaking.
Okay, great, thank you. So you touched on a number of issues that I'm going to ask you about. We're kind of going to get more into what specifically you'd like to do. Let's start with gun violence and mass shootings. What would you want the state legislature to do to stop mass shootings and just kind of promote safety?
I want gun sense legislation, and I'm proud that I am a volunteer with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. I am a gun sense candidate designated. I'm endorsed by Everytown for gun safety. And we need common sense gun legislation with background checks before you purchase a firearm. It should not be so easy. And I'll say, and I know at least over 80% of Americans support this. And I know Arizonans want the same. So I support raising the age to 21. Heck, when I wrote that article that was published, I just thought about, why don't we just show the people when they're trying to get a weapon, what in the world that ammunition does to inside of a body. So they take that thing seriously, and they need training. And this is not, the Wild West out here. We need to be responsible, and gun sense legislation is going to help us get on that path.
And so if you propose, more background checks or raising the age to 21, you'll inevitably come up against an argument that says that violates the Second Amendment. How would you respond to that argument?
Shoot, we are gun owners in my home, and we lock our doggone guns up. You put the lock through the thing, the barrel, and you keep the ammunition and the weapon separate. I've talked to a lot of people across the district and across the state. They believe the same thing. You have a weapon, you're responsible for your weapon. Many grew up this way. They tell me stories about how their parents made sure they respected the lethality of those weapons.
So it would be, if someone says that violates the Second Amendment, you would say that there is an implied responsibility for all gun owners that doesn't?
Yes, okay. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How about, we recently, in the most recent legislative session, greatly expanded the voucher program for schools. You kind of touched on this. What do you think about the vouchers, and what do you think the legislature should do to fund schools?
I say again, we've got to fully fund public K through 12 education. Vouchers is not going to help that. It's going to destroy public schools. We have to keep the student, that child, our children, and the money together. My understanding is that private schools, they have a small percentage of how they educate the general population. So you could take a voucher with no accountability, go to a private school. That private school can reject your child and say no. So we will make sure you're going to get educated in the public school system. We don't subsidize people who most likely, and the information shows most likely they already can afford it. They shouldn't get tax breaks and whatnot. Most of our children, and myself included, have been educated in public schools. We cannot let that be destroyed.
Okay. All right, and then moving on to voting laws. As we have President Trump keeps claiming that he won the election in 2020. Following that, we have state legislatures across the country, including Arizona, passing all kinds of laws dealing with how votes are counted, who's eligible to vote, all that type of thing. What is your sense of how secure the elections are, and what would you want the legislature to do?
They are secure. So without voting rights, the rest of what we care about doesn't matter. So I am so glad we are talking about my number one concern. And I have testified in the state legislature this session, and one of the first few bills I testified against were on voting rights. I pointed out during my testimony that the Arizona elections in 2020 were free, fair, secure. There was no fraud. And we must not have barriers to our fundamental right to vote in free, fair, secure elections. We've got to stay on the permanent early voting list that needs to be restored. There are disabled people working multiple jobs. We have folks out here earning a living, keeping the lights on, clothing and feeding their families. We can do, and we've been doing it for decades, to vote by mail. I'm a veteran. My whole career, I have voted by mail. Not a problem. So we've got to automatically, this is our right to vote. This is how we get our voices heard at the ballot box and keep our lawmakers accountable. So you should be able to go same day and vote. It should be doggone automatic. You turn 18, you automatically get registered. Obviously, there can be some other mitigating circumstances that might prevent you from be able, have that right. but that you should be opting out and not trying to go opt in. So I just want to make sure that we don't, vote and then we're like fearful that our vote, our voice is going to be overturned by folks who don't like the outcome.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think Washington State or maybe Oregon, like in the last year or two, they've started like the universal registration. That it's presumed that you're registered to vote rather than having to go through the process. Is that something that would you put forth a bill saying that Arizona should have universal registration?
Yes,
Mhm.
totally support that.
Okay. All right. And then another big one is water, right? So the Colorado River, the levels are really low. Lake Powell, Lake Mead, really, really low. Groundwater in Arizona, also a lot of people having problems with their wells. What should the state legislature do to make sure that Arizona has enough water?
We need to look at, what jurisdictional authority that we have in concern, in relation to water. And it's a multifaceted solution. There is no one size that's with most things that we're tackling, there is just not one way or one method that we're going to get after this. So I've heard different solutions like drip irrigation and, getting the water out that way so we can have a better control of how much is being used, conserving water, recycling water, capturing that storm water. There are so many different methods, and I support finding ways to make sure that we have clean, safe, abundant water.
Mhm. Okay. All right. And another enormous issue is abortion. So after Roe v. Wade was overturned, the state legislatures have a lot more power to pass laws relating to abortion. What kind of laws do you think if you were elected to the state legislature, what kind of laws would you want to see?
I'm want to ensure that you're not going to get prosecuted for, a decision that's heart-wrenching. This is not an easy thing to decide in regards to abortion. This is an overarching, bigger issue. Bodily autonomy and these decisions about your reproductive medical care is between that person and anyone that they trust. You've got your family, you've got your friends, you've got your clergy, you've got different trusted agents. That is no one's, lawmakers need to stay out of that.
Mhm. So, one of the questions I've asked all the candidates is when we talk about abortion, a lot of the conversation is taken up with, an ectopic pregnancy, the health of the mother, or, like really late term abortion. But it seems like a lot of the abortions are done by women who are already mothers. They're just making a choice. That's what they're doing. So I've been asking everybody, if you have a 25-year-old woman becomes pregnant, and she has no medical conditions. She just does not want to be pregnant at that time. Do you think it would be legal? It should be legal for her to terminate the pregnancy?
Yes,
Mhm.
that is again her decision with her trusted agents.
Mhm.
It's not easy to make that type of decision, but every case is different.
Mhm. And so, um, when it comes down to actually writing a law, which I assume is going to be a big deal in the next legislative session, like how would you write it? Like, would you say that the state has like no role whatsoever in regulating abortion, or are there any parameters that you would put on it at all?
I wouldn't put restrictions.
Mhm.
Again, that's lawmakers, stay out of it.
Mhm.
Just stay out of it. You need to make sure where it's going to be safe and no one's going to tell you what to do with your body.
Okay. And I had a reader question from a couple chats ago that I really liked. It has to do with schools. So right now we have problem holding on to teachers, not just in Arizona, but across the country. They're just, especially with the pandemic, it's been quite a problem. What would you do as a legislator to make sure that we retain enough teachers to staff our classrooms?
I think there's different programs of shepherding those who want to get into education. It disturbs me that we made made an environment where a teacher feels that they could have legal jeopardy over what is going on in their classrooms. I partner, my children are in school, and I partner with them, with my kids' teachers all the time. And so I just want to make sure that we support them. They're taking care of our children, educating them. And sometimes there are situations, and in the military, I actually went a part of a team, and we went to Department of Defense schools, and teachers were describing how, and back then, we were full on in going to war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And, the teacher can be the one that's consoling their student because their parents have been seriously injured or they are killed in action. And so we need to treat our teachers, again, with dignity and respect. They should not have to fear that someone is out to get them. They are servicing and taking care of our children every day.
Mhm.
So I look at programs for them, incentivize and shepherd them into the profession.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things that if you're elected is you're going to have a surplus of money. There's going to be several $billions that the state of Arizona is going to have. Broadly, what would you want to spend that money on? And just to kind of follow on, do you think that teacher raises should that surplus be used to up the pay for teachers?
Yes. Whatever is needed to ensure your child is educated, starting with the doggone the actual brick and mortar building that you go into. Pretty sure there's schools that are in disrepair. I believe, yes, there needs to be this money spent on the upkeep of the physical school, everybody who works in there, the educators, and all support staff and folks who keep that running need their wages increased, their benefits increased. We need to not hold, why are we holding on to money just sitting there when we're watching people suffer? That is wrong.
So, it's going to be billions of dollars. So beyond, what you just explained about funding schools, what else would you want that surplus to be spent on?
I'd want to make sure that if there's any other, because I'm about safety, and I know we've got federal dollars, and I'm all about you conduct an audit and make sure where that was supposed to go to makes it there. But again, if there are things that the jurisdiction of the state legislature that can contribute and help to any safety concerns of our infrastructure. I mean, I have Picture Rocks as part of my district, and I have driven the roads and the non-roads that exist out there. I shouldn't be driving through there and see exposed pits of pipes and electrical things and hearing stories about how hard it was to traverse the roadways and whatnot to get to people who could be, with all this monsoon season. I watched a video where children in the school bus got stuck, and they had to offload the children and get them to another bus. We need to make sure our citizens are safe.
So in Arizona, the governor and the state legislature have taken a very proactive role with regards to the border. They really are trying to kind of follow in the footsteps of Texas, of having DPS troopers involved in enforcement immigration, and they've set aside a big chunk of money for border counties in terms of law enforcement prosecutions. What do you think that the state's role should be with regard to the border?
So we need to make sure that the border is secure. I know we have, concerns about fentanyl and many things that shouldn't be coming across the border. But my thing is, and overarching is, treat immigrants with dignity and respect. They have a right by the legal provisions to come to our country, and they should not be blocked from that.
Mhm. And how would that look? What would that look like in terms of a state policy?
That is something that I want to get with my colleagues about, because I don't have that solution at this point, and I'm into research. I like to talk to people at the doors with my colleagues
Mhm.
and look at the laws and figure out what is the best course of action.
Okay. So I'm going to start getting into some reader questions, but before we do that, I wanted to ask you, with your military experience, I don't know much about this, but is there an issue with regard to the at a state level, the National Guard or something like that, that you think deserves attention?
Well, I want to look at, with preventing gun violence, and there is a huge problem with suicide, with veteran suicide, military member suicide. So I think we should look at how we're providing mental health quality and access. And, it doesn't just apply to our military members, but I will tell you, I'm an advocate, and I work closely with whomever I need to, that, has the authority and the willpower and the service to make sure we're not having barriers, and that, with providing mental health care, we also need to make sure that our professionals providing that care are taken care of. It's tough. And I know for me, it's been tough, because 24/7, for me, it's been 24/7 worrying about, are my people homicidal? Are they suicidal? Are they thriving professionally and personally? I want to make sure I've created an environment that they feel like they can come to me. So we need to look at whatever, again, under state legislature, what can we do? What can we do to help our service members stay focused and serve our country, and know that we've got their backs?
Okay. All right. So we have a question from a reader that has to do with abortion. It looks like it's trying to clarify more your position on it. So do you mean to reinstate Roe v. Wade, or just no restrictions at all? Meaning late-term abortions for any reason could take place.
So where I stand is, it's case by case. I want to ensure, yes, I want Roe v. Wade. I'm devastated that that was overturned. These decisions are tough, and it's personal for me. My triplets, people get excited when I explain that I have triplets, and as a veteran, they were born on 11/11/11. But I think long and hard lately about, would they even exist in this current world, in the current state? I'm worried that, I love my children. My husband and I chose to have more children, and the only way that we saw a pathway forward was IVF. And that is strenuous and on your body, and the things that you're going through of wanting to expand your family. But birth control pills, that's part of the process. There's a timing issue that, medical experts know how to make that happen. Also, I suffered miscarriages, natural miscarriages. That was devastating for me. And there's many folks that are able to have children that can relate, and anyone who is supporting that person and they lost their child. So I'm worried about these types of things, and we need to go back and make sure we're not infringing on someone's right to make these decisions with their healthcare professionals and consulting their trusted agents.
And I think you're getting at it, but I think the reader, what they want to know is, should it be legal for a woman to have an abortion in their, 6th, 7th, 8th month of pregnancy?
If it's medically, it's bottom line.
Mhm.
Yes, it should be legal.
Mhm.
That's up to medical professionals and that person.
Mhm. Okay. All right. So we don't have many more questions here from readers. So I guess what I'd like to do is just kind of give you the question of, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think that you'd like to talk about?
Well, wrapping this up And I appreciate everyone's questions. And I want to leave everybody with this. I want all Arizonans to know directly from me that I see myself as a protector of their life, limb, health, and welfare. I'm a public servant, and I am beholden to Arizonans. I am beholden to you. I am inviting you today to join my campaign. We are in this together, and I will continue to go across this this district and talk to anyone. I love knocking doors. I love talking to Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. And for me, it doesn't matter what party or not party you're with. We are human beings and we care about each other. I don't know how many times it has been so inspirational. It's been, we know in Arizona how hot it is. You can get dehydrated pretty doggone fast. But I had one woman who was just adamant to make sure I didn't pass out. She was like, "You're gonna die out there. Let me get you some water. Why don't you come inside for a minute?" We care about each other and we need to remember that. And that's why I'm asking you to come canvass with me. Because then you find out what each other is going through. You don't know what somebody's going through. You could look at somebody's, facial expressions or whatever. You have no idea what they're going through. Let's go talk to our neighbors. Let's find out what they're going through.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so I think we can wrap this up. We went for about a half hour. So thank you, Dana, so much for taking the time to talk to us. And thank you to the people who've taken the time to attend. And with that, I will bring it to a close. So thank you and have a good one, everybody.